Everybody, it's Joe from greenlightsound.com, and today we're going to take a look at how we can thicken up guitars with distortion and saturation, first with the Thermionic Vulture from UAD, of course based on the hardware version of that unit. And then if you're not into the UAD system, we'll look at some native alternatives, including one from Overloud, Soundtoys, and XLN Audio that kind of get you in the same ballpark. They are all a little bit different, but we'll see how they stack up against one another. The first thing I want to do is just hear the guitar part by itself without any distortion, so the plugin is bypassed. Here's the guitar part. So starting out with the UAD version of the Vulture, I just left it on its first distortion type setting, that is triode distortion. I dialed in the drive to about 7. Bias was just left in its default setting, and I pulled back the volume to kind of level match. So here's what it sounds like with the Vulture. Check out this power button in the middle. I'll bypass it on and off as it plays. So you can really hear that kind of thick, rich tone in the lower mids of the guitar part. Kind of fills it in, thickens it up really nicely. Now if I bypass this and I jump over to the Overloud Sculptube, it's also based on the Thermionic Vulture. And I kind of dialed in the same settings here. It's got some different sound to it. It tends to emphasize the high end a little bit more. But here's what this one sounds like. Check out the power button up here. I'll bypass this one on and off. It thickens it up also, maybe not as much as the UAD version, but it does a similar thing. We'll bypass this one now and jump over to Decapitator from Soundtoys. Now this is obviously not a straight up replica of the hardware version of the Vulture, but if you take a look at the style settings down here, T and P are both based upon the Vulture. T is for the triode setting, P is for the pentode setting, which we'll look at later. You have to watch out for the Decapitator though, because it's a little bit more aggressive. So the drive I barely touched at all, and it tends to get really edgy if I push the drive up. The nice thing about this one though is that you do have some tone controls which helps shape it if you don't like the tone you're getting. Here it is with the Decapitator triode setting from Vulture. And I'll bypass it on and off with the plug-in bypass button up here. Now we'll take a look at another plugin not directly based upon the Vulture, but gets you a similar result, and that is the RC20 Retro Color from XLN Audio. I just went with just the distortion right here. I picked the tube pair, and I pushed up the distortion until I got what I liked out of it. Now one thing about this plugin is it tends to kind of dull the high end. Take a listen. And I'll bypass it on and off. So it does add that nice thickness to it, but it kind of dulls the high end a little bit. So what you can do here to compensate for that is engage the EQ on the bottom band here. There's a tilt EQ setting right over here, and I just push the tone up a little bit, 1.7 dB, pushes that top end back in. Here's the EQ off. Back in. You just have to watch out because it is a tilt EQ. As you push the highs, you're cutting the lows a little bit too. So now I put all 4 plugins up on the screen. We're going to check them out one at a time in the same exact order. So we'll start with the UAD first, then move to the Overloud, then Decapitator, and then the RC20. Here is Culture Vulture UAD version. So my thought from that just back-to-back example is that the Culture Vulture original UAD version is a little bit thicker than the Overloud version. The Decapitator has a little bit more bite and a high-end edge to it. And the RC20 seems to have kind of a higher mid-range emphasis. They have a slightly different tone to them, but they all do that nice, subtle thickening of the guitar part. Now, if we want to really punish it, we can go to the pentode setting, and I'll take the Culture Vulture again. I'll move it to P1. Let's try to balance this one out with some really aggressive distortion. And if you want to totally crush it, you hit this overdrive button. Obviously not what we want in this setting. So I would go back to that triode type distortion. That's the one that really warms things up. If we really push the Overloud version, here's the pentode setting. But again, thickening is best done with that triode setting. And if we really push the Decapitator, it gets really distorted really fast. There's nothing. Bypassed. And let's just push the RC20 to see what this does. Definitely less edgy on the top end with the distortion. RC20 is really kind of subtle, which is nice. So there we have it, a really nice way to thicken up guitar parts with distortion and saturation, first using the UAD Culture Vulture, and then some native alternatives from Overloud with their Sculptube, from Soundtoys with Decapitator, and from XLN Audio with the RC20. I do want to mention the Culture Vulture is on sale from UAD for $99 right now. It's one of their Tuesday plug-in specials, which they tend to keep at that same price even after a week. So I would check out the Culture Vulture if you want to catch it on sale and you're in the UAD system already. If not, take a look at some of these other alternatives, decide which one you like the tone of best, and try it out in your next mix. Try to thicken up those guitar parts with a little bit extra saturation in there. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, so we can keep you in the loop as to what's coming up next, and I'll see you in the next one.